Alright guys, so here's a quickish video. I played 2 games today against the same player who's rated around 1150, and there's a common theme to both games, which is to do with castling. Now, why do we castle? Right, and why is it recommended to castle? You don't always castle, it's not always the best thing, but it has very, very strong positives to it. Does 2 main things. One is it gets your king out of the centre of the board and towards the corners. Now your king is safer in the corners and it's easier to protect it there because there are simply fewer squares where your opponent's pieces can point at your king if your king is towards one of the corners of the board. The second thing is that castling helps bring your rooks into the game, or at least one of your rooks into the game. Gets them towards the centre of the board where you'll quite often find that pawns have moved forward, pawns have exchanged, and we get semi-open or open files. So, without any further ado, game number 1. I'm playing with the black pieces. My opponent starts with the English. So I respond with this King's Indian. And fairly normal development, okay? Now, I'm expecting here maybe my opponent might castle queenside. Is that his plan? So I prepare to fianchetto. This I don't think was a great move, pushing f3 at this point. It's the forget about it pawn, so I guess he's worried about my bishop coming here, but this pawn's protected, you know, he has other options. See how tight my pawns are in this game compared to my opponents as well. So I push d6, so this hypermodern style, I'm not competing for the centre straight away, I want to build up to that. Now he offers the trade against the fianchettoed bishop. This is a very common manoeuvre. Because if this bishop comes off the board, then the dark squares around my king become weaker and could perhaps be exploited. But of course I don't want to initiate that trade because I don't want the queen down on h6. So I push a pawn now to c5, and we have d5, and now only now I really strike for the centre. So we take off both bishops, and now we have captures on there, knight captures, and now I centralize a rook, right? And reason I've done that is because I've castled and, you know, my rook was just there on f8. The king moving to g7 has nothing to do with it, right? Okay, now, bishop comes out to defend this pawn, so this pawn is currently defended twice, and it's attacked twice. So it doesn't make sense for me to initiate exchange there. So I push b5, and we have queen across, now pinning the knight to the king. I develop my knight, white develops his knight, maybe he's getting ready to castle kingside. So I come in with an attack. So now I've got 2 attackers on this pawn. I'm also attacking the light squared bishop. Now you might think the light squared bishop is perhaps not a very good piece at this point in time, but on the other hand, my opponent's king is still in the middle of the board, and therefore it's in my interest to try and break through in the centre if I can. And we have f4 now. He moves the forget about it pawn again. So I take the bishop at this point. I just want to open up the board. The bishop's defending this key pawn, right? And that pawn is in front of His Majesty the King. So I want that pawn, right? You go there, queen recaptures. Now the queen is the only defender of the e4 pawn. I capture c4, queen moves away, and now boom, in comes the rook. I could have grabbed the pawn on the previous move as well. And now the king is actually the only defender of that knight, and now the king can't castle. It's too late. We have h3 for some reason. I put my bishop on b7 to attack this undefended knight. If the knight captures here, I've got queen captures, and I'm fairly happy. So what does the knight do? It retires to e3, and I think this was a mistake because now I can set up a barrage. All right? So we have an open file. It's the open e file, and my opponent's king has not castled, still has not castled. Okay, so the only defender of this knight right now is this queen. The only other piece that can come to the defense of the knight is the king himself. So queen now to e7, also preparing to triple up on here, right? So we have king comes in to defend, but it's pointless. Now rook e8, and I've got 3 major pieces lined up on the e-file. The king's now moved, can't castle. We have a pawn push. I grab the knight, attacking the queen. Queen grabs a pawn, doesn't matter. And it's all over in just a few moves. And there you go. And here my opponent resigns. Okay, let's go on to the second game, which wasn't completed all the way to the end. So this time I've got the white pieces, and we have e4 and c6. So the Caro-Kann, I play d4, d5, and I'm playing the fantasy variation at the moment, which is proving to be quite successful and lots of fun. And now we have d takes c4, f takes c4. So now I've got these 2 central pawns. All right. So in a comfortable position, we have preparation for a fianchetto. Okay, knight to f3, bishop fianchettos, bishop out to c4, and now e5 striking in the center. I just reinforce with c3, and now c5. So he's now got 2 pawns and a bishop and a queen looking at this pawn here. So what do? I advance the pawn. Just get out straight out of trouble. I just dodged the bullet there, right? d5 resolves all of this tension, creates a blockage here. Now this bishop's looking a little less confident. And now f5. And look at all the space around this king now, right? What is the point of that pawn move? Yes, he's contesting the center, but you know, at what cost, you have to ask. So I put my queen in front of the king to defend the pawn. He moves his queen out and I castle. All right, this is move 10. Develops a knight. I bring out my bishop. Knight comes here. I capture a pawn now. Why? Because I want to smash open the center. I want to do anything I can to really get rid of my pawns, because I want to come for this guy here. Right? Pawn takes, and now again, look how exposed and vulnerable this king is starting to appear. I develop my knight to d2, finally connecting my rooks, and we have a pawn there. Rook again. Can you see the pattern here? If you fail to castle your king, you are inviting your opponent to break open the center and then just line up all his major pieces to come with a barrage against you. Right? I can sacrifice stuff here almost, you know. I can line up bishop, rook, you know, knights, everything can come in just to smash open the center and make way for the queen to come in. All right? And we have knight there taking a pawn. I move my knight to here, and now my opponent again resigns. This pawn is being attacked twice. Now he sent me a message saying he clicked resign by accident, which is why I always make sure I have confirm resign set in my settings on chess.com, so that you can't do that. But even so, it's a horrible position. I've got these 2 semi-open files. The F file and the E file are semi-open. So I've got rooks, both of my rooks looking at these pawns. The king's stuck in the middle of the board. There's so much space. He's been throwing pawns around like there's no tomorrow. And again, you know, he's looking at the wrong end of a defeat here, really, quite honestly. You see, almost every one of my pieces is involved in the attack, and you know, what's he got here? You've got to castle your king. And something that I'm really thinking about a bit more at the moment is sometimes maybe moving my king's knight, my king's bishop first before the queen side minor pieces, and then sometimes I'll like castle on move 4, move 5, rather than waiting till the end of development to castle, just to make sure that I get the opportunity and get that in. It really is that important, guys. Okay, so don't forget this. Don't neglect castling, because it could cost you big time. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.